This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the CEO of SURG Copper, Mr. Leif Nilsson. Leif, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, Gerardo?
I am well. Thank you for coming on. It's been a busy year for you, frankly, but it's been a very busy couple of weeks. You just announced the closing of a $14 million bought deal private placement on June the 9th. And today, or yesterday, I should say, you announced an intercept of 432 meters of 0.61% copper equivalent and 506 meters of 0.43% copper equivalent in the final winter drilling results from West Seal. First, let's start with the financing. Leif, congratulations. That's a pretty robust treasury moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the context on that transaction, we had gone out with a $10 million bought deal led by a group out of Vancouver called PI Financial. The other firms in the syndicate were Raymond James and Haywood Securities, so all very experienced folks in the junior mining space. That deal was ultimately upsized from 10 million to 14 million. And as you mentioned, that just got wrapped up last week. So that's all closed. Proceeds are in the treasury, and we're in a very strong position going forward to advance our exploration programs really straight across the district over the next 2 years or so.
Excellent. And let's pivot to West Seal, and then we can talk about the drilling program that has already commenced with 2 core rigs at UTSA. You announced, I highlighted the 2 intercepts there, but you announced final assay results for multiple resource definition and exploration holes at the property. Can we go over those and provide a bit of context there?
For sure. So just as a reminder to your audience, this was a drill program that commenced at the tail end of 2020. It was a 20,000 meter program. So that's in the context of, the total meterage that comprises the drilling database at the UTSA property or the resources at that project. It's about a sixth of the overall drilling. So we made a pretty significant investment in the project over the course of the winter through that 20,000 meters. This release that we put out was, the last batch of results from that program. We highlighted a number of intervals that I think met our objectives and achieved our goals of expanding the high-grade core at West Seal in multiple directions. So out of the 4 or 5 holes that were highlighted in that press release, one of them was situated over on the west side of West Seal, and did its job of extending mineralization over in that direction. We also released the furthest hole to the northeast on that fence line, if you will, at West Seal. That was a very significant interval and pushed the high-grade core at West Seal to the northeast in that direction. And we'll be looking to follow up with additional holes in and around that area. And then lastly, there was 3 holes that were collared in between the 2 deposits. So in the kind of gap zone, as we call it, between East Seal and West Seal. They were pointing in a variety of directions. So we had some pretty strong intervals and some holes that were pointed toward the west that did the job of extending that high-grade core mineralization a little bit to the east at West Seal. And then we did, we were able to prove up some, lower grade but near surface mineralization in that gap zone between the 2 deposits. So overall, a number of very significant intervals that came out of that update. And then, as you said, later on in the press release, we provided some guidance and an update on the fact that the summer program has kicked off. So we've got 2 rigs turning at the moment. We've provided guidance to the market that there's a minimum 5,000 meter drill program taking place at West Seal. That may be upsized as we move through the summer, depending on engineering feedback that we get and results as they come in. But the real objective of that is to, as we said earlier in the year, to finish the job of drilling off West Seal, cut off that database, and proceed with a resource update later in the year. And lastly, we are kicking off with the proceeds of this financing, a pretty exciting and district-wide exploration program. So there are some targets in the near resource area that we'll see some early drilling pretty soon. And then we also have this airborne ZTEM geophysical survey that is currently being flown. So when I was at site last week, we got to see some of that activity taking place. And we're very excited to get the results of that, as it will be a very helpful tool for us in guiding future exploration really straight across the district.
Excellent. Before I let you go, Leif, I have to ask you about the copper space. We've had a mild pullback, which I frankly think it's healthy. We're still at $4.33 a pound. The future in the short term, midterm, and long term looks extremely bright. But I'd love your thoughts on the copper space and where things stand now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been seeing in commodity markets across the board a lot of very interesting price action, which I would really chalk up to a lot of supply chain issues that are really a big lesson to be learned from the pandemic. So you're seeing that in agricultural commodities, lumber, and of course a lot of metals. So I wouldn't take any of the near-term price action or the recent price action as something to be read into too deeply about the long-term macro thesis with copper. I think everyone in this business is very remains very excited about the backdrop there in the business in terms of those big mega trend drivers of future demand in the copper space, and then some of the longer-term supply issues we're seeing with lack of new discoveries, declining grades in the major producing regions, and things of that nature. So the future remains, really about as bright as it's ever been for the copper space. And I think a lot of the near-term volatility is just in relation to some of these, COVID-related supply chain kinks working their way through the market.
Well said. Well said. Leif, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Anything else before I let you go?
No, that's it. I really appreciate the time, and thanks for the call, Gerard.
Looking forward to having you back on. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye now.